An hour and a half video? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not, but before you run away in horror, let me just quickly explain. Last week I was honoured to be a guest on the Paul or Nothing podcast, where we talked about the 1989 Put It There documentary that Paul McCartney did to accompany Flowers in the Dirt. So this video is going to be almost all audio only. If you want to step away from it and come back, YouTube should remember where you are if you want to split it into a few parts. In a moment, I'm going to hand you over to Sam, who hosts Paul or Nothing. He's got a little exclusive intro for you, but please do check out his podcast because there's loads of great Paul McCartney content on there. He discusses lots of topics with some great guests. Unfortunately, this time he had to put up with me, but I'm now about to hand over to Sam for the intro to part 1 of this video.
Hello there, YouTube! My name's Sam from the Paul or Nothing podcast, the place to get all of your Paul, all of the time. At least when you're not here on Andrew's far superior channel. My podcast, as you may have guessed, is all about McCartney, the Big Mac himself, as well as Beatles from time to time. And I know you're thinking, who the hell's this guy? Get him off! Well, tough luck, I'm afraid, as unfortunately you're going to hear quite a lot of me over the next hour or so. This is just a little bonus, exclusive intro I thought I'd record to spare you lovely folks the torture of having to sit through my normal introductions for the podcast. They do tend to go on just a wee little bit too long. And besides, this is like one of those slightly different remixes or track listings you find on a McCartney CD version or B-side, you know? This is all unique to your own listening experience. There are several minutes of exclusive audio that will only be available here in this YouTube video, which also applies to the podcast on my end of things. The podcast itself is currently available in its full length, available at all of your regular podcasting locales. So hey, if you're curious to check out the second half, you can go and find it now. Also, with this being YouTube, there are several copyright laws that may not apply to me on the podcast as well, so a lot of the music we will be talking about you can actually hear in the podcast as well. You can go and find it now anywhere where you can find Paul or Nothing, even if it is just out of morbid curiosity. Of course, I just wanted to take a second to thank Andrew once again for coming on the podcast. Honestly folks, you all know him here better than I do. Like me, you could all listen to him talk about the Beatles for hours. That's exactly what I wanted to do, and that's exactly what I did. We truly went deep on this one, folks, and I can't promise there won't be lengthy, winding digressions concerning McCartney's wider oeuvre. What you're about to hear was mine and Andrew's discussion of the 1989 TV documentary, Put It There, which mostly details Paul's album from that year, Flowers in the Dirt, as well as his album from the previous year, aka Snover VCCR, aka the Russian album. Spoiler alert, I have covered both of these albums very recently on the podcast, be sure to check out those as well. But yeah, we start off with me and Andrew getting to know each other for a little while, and then we will eventually cover everything surrounding Put It There. And judging by the fact that this is part 1 of 2 rather long videos, you can trust me when I say everything. Finally, just a little warning, I'm not exactly sure how adult the fan base is here. I will just say that, at least coming from my end, there will be adult language and adult humour. All opinions are my own and do not reflect Andrew's at all. Right, now that we've gotten the legals out of the way though, why don't we get on with the show, eh? Let's cut to the live feed. 1, 2, 3, go. And now it's time for me to bring on today's guest. Joining me, folks, is another member of the distant, far-flung community of Beatle fans, of course being the YouTubers. My guest today is, well, in possession of an incredibly enviable YouTube channel that covers all manner of Beatle music, solo Beatle music, and even occasionally, folks, as hard as it is to comprehend, other types of music too. He's incredibly well read and knows a metric shit ton of Beatle-based trivia, McCartney facts, and how to collect vinyl. However, folks, this is his very first podcast ever, and despite being someone who regularly puts his face on the internet, he confessed to me privately that he's a little bit nervous. So everyone, please join me in a raucous welcome for Andrew Dixon of the Andrew Dixon YouTube channel. Welcome, my friend. How are you doing?
Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, I'm looking forward to this. It's I'm definitely out of my comfort zone a little, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Especially the topic that we've chosen to talk about should be fun.
No, I'm glad to finally have you on here, man. I've been binging your channel over the last few weeks, and I can't wait to cruelly exploit your reach and audience to broaden my own, It's all networking.
Feel free, you exploit away. It's fine with me.
Yeah, we are. I'm sure I can sell them some supplements as well along the way. Now, I had so much fun watching your live stream last night, despite how often I had to stick my fingers in my ears because you were talking about something that we might be covering today. But rather heartbreakingly, at the same time, there was the worst timing ever. Lawrence Juba was also doing his own live stream. Obviously, we've had Lawrence on the show before, and I got to hear you talk whilst he was playing Maisie. It was great. It was just this quite surreal moment,
Well, I saw you put the message. You put a message up in the live chat saying that Lawrence Juba's doing a live chat as well now, and I'm torn. And I wanted to read it out. I thought there's no way I'm reading that out because I would lose 70% of my audience in one go. So I thought I'm just going to sort of bypass that and hope that people haven't seen you mention that.
Next time, I'm just going to say I'm doing a live stream. We'll see what happens,
Yeah, I'll read that out, no problem.
Also, just got to say, I loved seeing that you were drinking whiskey. I've mentioned your name to the Blotto Beatles podcast. Expect a message off them in the future.
Ah, interesting. Yes, I had a cheeky little single malt on the live stream last night. I'm not sure it helped my throat, to be honest, but I'm on tea out of my yellow submarine mug at the moment.
And I'm swigging directly from the bottle, a 1.5 litre bottle of Coke. So, keeping it nice and healthy.
Stuff. Brilliant.
Now, I'll let's start these interviews off with the most British question ever. So,
okay.
Where are you calling from? What's the weather like?
I'm in Leeds in West Yorkshire, and it has been utterly miserable all day. It's been that fine stuff that soaks you through, as Peter Kay says.
Oh, a British reference there, folks. This is going off to a great start. I'm going to start dropping some Only Fools and Horses lines in a minute. Oh my gosh.
You plonker.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Where's the Down by the Riverside Club? Well, it's down by the riverside, isn't it? Now, Andrew, something I always do on this show is a little quick fire McCartney Beatles segment.
Right. Okay.
So, your baseline for both me and the listeners.
Okay.
Questions are quick fire, but your answers need not be.
Fair enough. Go for it.
Is your favourite McCartney album still Ram?
Yes, I would say it is. I think it's unlikely that he's going to beat that at this stage. But yeah, I think Ram is just something that gets. I think the appreciation for Ram just seems to grow all the time. Other records, some people can maybe get a bit bored of. Band on the Run might get overplayed, but Ram doesn't seem to have had that yet. It's been. I first got to know Ram around about 1990, and it's just grown for me every year, really, and I'm loving it as much as ever.
I totally get that. The fact that Monkberry Moon Delight hasn't been featured in a Martin Scorsese crime documentary or epic, is criminal. It really is.
Yes.
Favourite Paul McCartney song, solo or Wings or whatever?
Well, I think, personally, the greatest song that he has ever done in the whole of his career is Maybe I'm Amazed. And I think it's just because it's just so purely him. And I know pretty much anything off McCartney II, McCartney III is. But the fact that it's also him singing about his favourite topic, which is Linda, everything on there is him. I think it's like it's McCartney in a bottle. If you want to know what is this guy all about, then Maybe I'm Amazed sort of kind of sums up what he can do and how well he can do it. So I think I'm including Beatles songs here. I think it's the best song he's ever done.
Oh, wow. Would you extend that to the live performances of Maybe I'm Amazed? Because this podcast's opinion is that he hasn't sung it correctly since 1970.
Yeah, I mean, he's never sung it that way, has he? He's always been a slightly different arrangement, a bit of extra piano tinkling.
Zhuzh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the 76 version. It's good. But no, I think that version that's on McCartney, 1970, that is the definitive Maybe I'm Amazed that he's not come really close to since, I don't think.
And it's probably one of the most underappreciated solos in his discography as well. It's like, ooh, My Love's the best solo ever. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy that, he played lead guitar on Taxman and various other things. He was...
Don't mention that around George, though, yeah.
The guy knows his way around a fretboard, and he's probably not had the recognition for that over the decades that he should have had. Because I guess, to the general public, if you stop the general public on the street and mentioned, the ones that you can find who know Maybe I'm Amazed, probably a lot of them either think it's the Beatles or they think it's Wings. They probably think he's got a full band behind him. I think it's the fans who realise just how much of him is on that record.
It would be very heartbreaking if someone said, "Oh, that song by the Faces, yeah."
Yeah, that would be annoying.
Most underrated Beatles album.
Most underrated Beatles album. Well, I would say Please Please Me.
Go on.
I just think, well, especially, I think given the fact that a couple of months ago I finished reading Mark Lewison's huge, like the uber big version of Tune In.
Wow.
It's just incredible. Sorry, I should say my signed copy of Mark Lewison's Tune In. Yeah, because
now we're talking.
Because I met him and he signed both books for me. I only took one for him to sign, but he said, "Well, I might as well do the other one while I'm here." Well, fine, yeah, suits me. But anyway, having just finished reading that recently and sort of reading all about the build-up, because that book finishes at the end of 1962. So we're talking sort of really 2 and a bit months before Please Please Me is recorded. So seeing sort of what they were going through in terms of their set lists and how they were changing a lot at the time, and even at the back end of 1962, there was still a fair way away from having that final set of songs as a set list. But it was just them, they were probably, like John Lennon says, they were the peak of their powers as performers was kind of like the Hamburg era. And they've just come back from Hamburg in Christmas 1962, their last stint in Hamburg, and they're just at the peak of those powers, I think, as a live band. Obviously not as a studio band. They were pretty crap in the studio. From a lot of the stuff that they'd done in 1962 was very sort of nervous and had to be done a few times, and they had to go back down to London and do it again. But as a live band, and that capturing as near as it could a live sound, I just think it's absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, I would say Please Please Me doesn't get the recognition it should.
Just release the Star Club tapes, Apple. Come on.
Well,
give us a good album version of that. Come on.
They're not going to, are they? I'm sure
we're going to get cold cuts before that, aren't we?
Yeah, I think this is it's that classic sort of difference between what we want releasing and what they want to release to us, and there's a bit of a difference there.
Oh, yeah, they must know that we want all 56 hours of Nagba Reel on YouTube for free.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Definitely for free.
Yeah. And then, we'll have the Carnival of Light shipped to all of us as well for free. Colour vinyl with a unique poster in each.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I think Carnival of Light, 2017, that was the moment. If we were going to get it, I think that was it.
Stella's joked that everything's going to get out the vaults, though, once Macca pops his clogs.
Yeah, I suppose it's when we get to a point where everything is owned by some large conglomeration and it's no longer the families, them themselves, or the families of them. Once that day is gone, then everything will be on a cornflakes advert. But
I've got a lot of hope for the future, though, with the Beatles legacy. I mean, Danny Harrison got the Beatles rock band off the ground. Fuck yeah. He's going to look after that legacy. I'm very confident.
Yeah, he's he moves at a glacial pace, doesn't he, in terms of what he's doing with his dad's catalogue. I'm certainly hoping that by the time that this goes live, it would be lovely if an All Things Must Pass box set has been announced. But it's got to be soon. It's got to be in the next couple of months or so, you would hope.
Come on, Danny, give us a bit of extra texture, if you know what I mean.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but...
Right, overrated Beatles album, go.
Oh, overrated Beatles album. That's a tough one. Oh, God.
Just say Pepper, go on.
I can't say Sgt. Pepper because I'm on record as saying that I think it's the greatest album ever made. So I can't say that. So I will go with... For those that rate it up at the top of the list, which I know is a lot of people, surprisingly more than you'd think, I'll say Let It Be.
Yep, get that. Yeah.
Which it's annoying, really, because when you look at the quality of some of the songs on there, and by some of the songs, I mean the Paul McCartney songs, this guy put out one of the strongest set of songs that he's ever put on an album. Well, up to that point, anyway. Long and Winding Road, Get Back, Let It Be, Two of Us. They're a massive quality of McCartney song, which he didn't always have. Even on great albums, it wasn't always necessarily his songs that made it great. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of people still put Let It Be up near the top of the Beatles albums rankings, and I don't know.
It's overrated, but I'm still going to buy it immediately when it comes out in September.
Oh God, yeah. Stay tuned for the unboxing video, guys.
We better have at least 30 extra songs on that, ranging from Susie Parker to the really awful take of Please Please Me that is about 12 seconds long and is awful. They better all be on there. Yeah,
it's not going to be though, is it? I think we both know that won't all be on there, but we'll get some of it, I'm sure.
Where was Revolution Take 20 on the White Album re-release?
Yeah, that was a shame. So we got Take 18, didn't we?
So close.
So close, and which I think that was like the genesis of it moving in that direction. It was like that crossover, wasn't it, between Revolution and Revolution 9, and Take 20 is the one where I think that hit its peak. And I don't know, did they want to use Take 18 because it was the start of it? Did they want to go right back to the very beginning of that happening?
Or are they just trolling us at this point?
Well, yeah, I don't think there will ever be such a thing as a Beatles release that everybody's happy with. I don't think it's actually possible.
You know what? That's so true, actually. Even with the fantastic Pepper re-release and the remix, the first thing that everyone said was, it's only a Northern song not on here. Where's Carnival of Light? Oh my gosh, this is awful. And then
absolutely, Carnival of Light,
rinse and repeat,
Carnival of Light was the one that really, really I think we should have had on there. Never mind.
Look, Paul, the song can't be so bad that it's going to sully the entire Beatles legacy, or is it?
Well, there's this rumour, isn't there, that, and I don't think it's true, but I don't suppose we know, that part of it is on the Liverpool Sound Collage album.
Oh, like buried in there somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that was maybe partly debunked when the Pepper box came out with the Free Now part that's on there, which we then found out was from, I can't remember what song that was from now, but I know there's been a lot of speculation over the years that he did actually bury a little bit of Carnival of Light on the Liverpool Sound Collage, but probably not, but you never know.
If I was working with Paul, I'd just be saying, can we put some backwards audio on this, please?
Yeah.
Say George is dead, miss him, something, something. Ringo's dead, miss him now. That would set people off,
Well, yes, absolutely it would. Yeah.
Now, to conclude our supposedly quickfire segment that has lasted already 12 minutes, favourite of the original 5 Beatle films?
The one that I always go back to a lot more than the others is Magical Mystery Tour.
Mind blown. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't expect that one.
The likelihood is, if I'm going to put on a Beatles film to watch, that is the one that I will put on. Just because it is mental, and it's just fun. I don't think I'll ever get my head around it, what's going on, and I think geographically as well, the fact that I almost live 10 miles north on the Dewsbury Road.
Oh, okay.
Is very similar to where I live, so I quite like that. But I love Hard Day's Night. Help. The second half of Help is very good if I need a sleep. I like the first half of Help. The second half of Help is, I find, quite unwatchable.
Which is ironic because the second half of the soundtrack is not in the film as well. So maybe if they'd ended it on yesterday, people might have pricked their ears up a little bit more,
Yes. The very first movie quote that my daughter ever learned when she was about 2 years old was, I can't even remember it myself now, at the start of Yellow Submarine.
Did she say, I thought you said the ring is missing or something.
No, it was, oh God, how does it start now? I'm having a mind blank. I can't remember. A long time ago in whatever it goes. There was an unearthly paradise called Pepperland.
One of the weirdest intros to a movie ever. Screenwriting 101 dictates that the Beatles should be in that scene and we get introduced to their characters and the arc. But no, it's like, let's just have 15 minutes of non sequitur insanity to open up this movie.
Definitely. I'm definitely going to do a video at some point about the end of Yellow Submarine film. The live appearance that they did, because it absolutely fascinates me how much...
It's so good. It's so good.
Well, just because of how much George does not want to be in the same room as Paul McCartney, and it's just so obvious on film.
I've got to rewatch that now. Folks, pause the podcast right now. Let's go back.
Just watch that last bit. Whenever, for example, whenever John speaks, George sort of lovingly looks up at him. Whenever Ringo speaks, George sort of looks towards him in a friendly way. Whenever Paul speaks, George just rolls his eyes and looks the other way. It was one of those days where George did not want to be in the same room as him, and it's fascinating.
Here's the motor. Please fuck off, Paul.
So, yeah.
We've got a little love. It's probably the best 30 seconds of their entire career. Like, it's just everything you want from all of them on a platter. I love that bit.
It's good. I mean, it must have been great when if you're in the cinemas back in...
And you didn't know as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that they suddenly appeared on the screen after having heard Eddie Yates from Coronation Street talking as Paul McCartney for an hour and a half. That must have been pretty good.
Speaking of the ending of Yellow Submarine, I've actually rewritten most of Yellow Submarine in my head as a better remake.
Okay.
And I believe the ending of Yellow Submarine should be either the Beatles getting back together or the Beatles not breaking up.
Oh, wow.
You change the timeline. Maybe you set Yellow Submarine in 1972.
Yeah.
And they have to go... Or you could call it Return to Pepperland and make it a sequel. But the Beatles have to go to Pepperland, they save Pepperland, and through that, they rekindle their friendship.
Wow.
Particularly where something like Paul's hanging off a cliff and George has to pull him up or something in a very Lord of the Rings-esque manner.
Stamps on his hands.
That'll teach you to do the solo for Taxman. into a fiery pit of blue meanies or something.
I think you need to secure funding for this.
Yeah, Peter Jackson, hit me up, paulmccartneypod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of anniversary editions and archive re-releases, I'm incredibly jealous of your wall of both of those products, actually.
Okay.
But in your opinion, which is the superior product? The McCartney archive re-releases or the Beatles 50th anniversary editions?
I'd have to say, for all its faults, I would have to say the McCartney archive collection. Partly because there's more of it, but I'm going to have to quantify a reason for this answer. Why do I think it's the Paul McCartney? I think just because of the depth that it goes into with the... I mean, I know the Beatles one does, but the depth of the photography and the making of the videos and the video content as well, that's something that they didn't have much at the start, just a DVD with a very short amount of content on, but you get something like the Red Rose Speedway archive collection, and the video content in there is brilliant. You got like Bruce McMouse, which it's absolutely crazy, but such fun. You've got things like that James Paul McCartney TV special that's on there. There's about 4 different... Why did he make 4 different videos of Mary Had a Little Lamb?
That's trolling at the highest order. Again,
why? Yeah. What was the reason for that? But they're all there. So I think probably the video content sets it apart more than anything. Yeah.
I've actually only just gone onto Macca's own website today to download all of the download exclusive tracks from his community page.
Yes.
I'd feel so annoyed if I didn't get the orchestra cut version of Some Days or the demo of Distractions on those albums. Yeah. They're absolutely beautiful little recordings.
Yeah. And there's an orchestra... there's a version of Dear Friend where they've raised the orchestra level as well, isn't there? That was one of the download
fantastic
onlys.
Concept. Just minor tweak remixes. Let's just bring the drum level up in Live and Let Die and see what happens. Yeah,
so those little downloads that he drops at a really terrible bit rate that annoys anybody who's spent money on a decent hi-fi system. But they are sort of some of the highlights. You get to 4:00 in an afternoon at some point. It's like, Paul McCartney's dropped another 128 kilobits per second MP3 of some song you didn't realise you needed another version of, and everybody gets excited for half an hour and never listens to it again.
And then complains, yeah.
Yeah, but I hope he always continues to do those with every archive release. they're just a good way of generating a bit of publicity. And here's some publicity for this set, and oh, by the way, you don't actually get this on the set if you buy it.
McCartney III, those bonus tracks should have been download exclusives from his website, and we should have got 4 actual bonus tracks. But, that's just my opinion.
Well, yes, and thankfully there was a way in the end to get those 4 without buying 4 different CDs.
No, you're right. You just had to be a Japanese national, yeah.
I've got it.
Oh, did you export it then?
Yeah, I just went onto that Japanese website and bought it, and it arrived Christmas Eve, which surprised me. I didn't expect it to get here till well into January.
I mean, it seems like every obscure version of that album, except the Spotify version, was delivered incredibly fast.
Yes,
just that one seems to be still undelivered for most people, I think.
Yes, I've got it. When did I get mine? I think early January mine arrived.
Yeesh.
But yeah, I know there's a lot of people still waiting for that and getting quite annoyed about it, I think.
Now, I was going through some of your videos, and one of the titles did make me laugh, and I had to watch it.
Ooh.
It was about the upcoming McCartney Glastonbury 2020 performance and how it's going to be like a clinch gig for McCartney. Obviously, that's aged like bread, that video.
Yes, why Paul McCartney shouldn't do Glastonbury, I think, with that video, yeah.
I think he took your advice, dude. I think he did.
He generated a worldwide pandemic just so that he could get out of doing Glastonbury on my advice. Yeah.
I mean, he did shit-can one of the biggest bands of the 70s just because he didn't want to tour anymore, Yeah. He's definitely pulled stunts like that before, allegedly. Allegedly. In the way that allegedly Jimmy McCullough put a gun to his head in his sleep, allegedly.
Yeah.
But the worst part, though, was that this Glastonbury gig was meant to culminate in the Charlie Lightning documentary.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah. Which sounds like it's been going on for years.
A trailer for that came out, didn't it? It was a red... You know that picture of McCartney with his guitar against a red background? That was the thumbnail for it. And I'm sure an announcement trailer was made anyway.
Okay, I'm not sure.
And then around the same time, Get Back got moved back to this year.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing that trailer. I'd be interested to have a little look, try and find it. But yes, it sounds like this film was being made for a few years, and that'd be interesting. Because I watched the Wingspan documentary just last week for the first time in a few years, and it was great. But you think, God, it should have been twice as long, at least, as what it was.
Could be 3 times.
Yeah, it was just like it was a real whistle-stop tour. And so you think, yeah, if he could have if he'd have known in the 70s that Wingspan film was going to be a thing, he could have prepared for it and had a lot more material for it. So maybe that's what he was trying to do. I don't know. But
but you can also just have shots of the album and interview footage of people talking over it. You don't have to have him composing "Dear Friend" to convey that.
Yeah,
I think everyone other than McCartney just says to him, look, man, people aren't going to buy this. People don't care. But we do. We need Scorsese's Wings documentary, you know?
Wow. I mean, that'd be brilliant. I think Paul is lacking something of the quality of the George Living in the Material World film. That Paul McCartney is deserving of something of at least of that stature. But there isn't really anything remotely that good available for him.
I think Living in the Material World might be my favourite Beatle-related film ever, even more than the ones they made themselves. Yeah,
it is. I mean, I sat through 3 hours of that in the cinema.
Same.
And yeah, it was fantastic. And I've watched it several times since. And yeah, it's just a cracking piece of filmmaking. Brilliant.
Ray Cooper at the start makes me cry every time when he goes, I can't talk about this in a frivolous way. It's still too painful. I'm like, oh God, Ray, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Go on and shake your tambourine during the concert for George in a weird way.
Yeah, he knew there was a camera on him, didn't he, doing that documentary?
Oh,
he was very displaying his emotions a great deal.
Like Barbara fucking Walters. The other great quote from that is, I liken just the 4 sides of a square. A square? I love that pronunciation.
I like the little bits like where he's in the mid-70s where you see him, the plonk of TV screen in front of him that's showing him doing This Boy.
Oh, and he sings along with it.
Yeah.
It's like, George, I knew it. I knew you liked being a Beatle, you lying bastard. I knew it.
Yeah, and you can tell he's loving it. And that clip of him, I think they show it at the start and the end where it's just like it's an outside
in the garden
scene of the flowers, and then his head pops up, and it's just. But it looks like no other period of George Harrison you've ever seen. It's like, what year was that? It's filmed sometime between 1966 and 2000, but I'm not quite sure which year it is. It was really weird.
I love that bit as well, where it's like, I'm signing those forms that I don't know what they mean. And I'm like, oh, it must have been... They must have to sign so many of those forms as well.
Yeah, it's a great film. But yeah, definitely McCartney is deserving of something similar.
But can he be deserving of it? I'm not deserving. Can it be made until you've got the end of the story?
Well, yes, this is a possible thing, because if it was made now, would he get too involved in it? Would he veto certain things? And like you say, the thing that, unfortunately, the George film has an ending, which makes for a better film, but that's not a good enough payoff in my view.
Oh yeah, Peter Jackson said the difficulty with the Two Towers is that no one dies at the end.
Yeah, it's definitely a worthy film. Very, very good.
Now, just before we get on to today's topic, from the worst news of the year to the best, how many versions of McCartney III do you now have?
I own 4 versions of McCartney III. So I've got 2 CDs. I was really lucky. The first one, the regular CD, it was that Monday night, the start of release week, so it would have been the Monday before the 18th of December. And there was just these rumours going around on Twitter about... Morrison's in Durham have been selling McCartney III, and then
so listeners, there's a largely American audience. Morrison's is like the third largest supermarket chain here in the UK, and they've got a bit of a history. I worked at Morrison's. They do have a long-standing history of releasing things on the wrong day.
Is it right? Well, I didn't know whether they'd either just made a complete cock-up, or I didn't know whether. I mean, this was probably my sort of conspiracy theory here. Had they had a sort of a tip-off from the record company to say, you put this on the shelves a few days early, that'll generate a little bit of publicity. I mean, only a little bit of publicity. But
again, like, was Third Man Records told to leak the Yellow Dice vinyl a few hours early, you know?
Yeah, maybe, possibly. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of thing goes on. But anyway, so I'd heard these sort of couple of rumours, and about 7:30 at night, and I just thought, well, I can't just sit here with this information. So I thought, well, the Morrisons nearest to me, they don't get involved in that kind of thing. They're catering to a different audience. So I thought, they're not going to have it there. But if I go to the other side of Leeds, I think I might be okay. So it was like a 20-minute drive to this Morrisons, and got my mask on, went in, got over to the CD section, and there was one there on the shelf, just one. And it was really weird. So I picked it up, and I was almost expecting a security guard to sort of step out into the aisle and say, "Sorry, sir, put that back until Friday, please." And right through to paying for it at the till, and even once I'd paid for it, I was just really ridiculously. Yeah? I was expecting a security guard to say, "I'm sorry, you're not allowed to buy that until Friday." And I got in the car and just sat in the car and just took photographs of it and sent it to all my friends who might care. So that was great, because it meant that I was able to sort of really hammer it over the next couple of days and do a review a couple of days before the release date, which was nice.
Oh wow! So you didn't get involved in any of the leaks then?
No. Well, I had a really bad MP3 of Find My Way, probably at the beginning of December, and I listened to it once, and it was such bad quality. I thought, this is putting me off. So I didn't do anything else. So I tried to avoid everything. So I went in really sort of fresh with it.
Those early leaks did have the audio quality of a potato.
Oh, yes, definitely.
I'm not a guy who's normally into being an audiophile, but I was like, oh, there's a marketable difference here. Like, Jesus.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I got that a few days early, and I got the Japanese one. The indie rough trade white vinyl arrived on release day. Oh. And coincidentally, that was also the day that I got my new turntable upgrade. So that was nice. So I was able to I did a listening party video, which I'd never done really, but it was quite fun, and people seemed to enjoy it, where, you know, I pressed play at my end with headphones on. Everybody else pressed play at the same time.
Oh, it's that kind of listening party.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then I just sort of I talked about the album, and people on live chat were talking about the album. And for a lot of the people, it was the first time they'd ever heard it because it was release day. So that was fun to do, and I got a lot of people asking me to sort of do more albums, like why not go and do... I've got people asking me to do Driving Rain and Flaming Pie and things, so I'm probably going to do more of that kind of stuff. So they were the first two that I got, and then the Japanese CD arrived on Christmas Eve, which, like I say, was much earlier than I expected. And then the Spotify Coke Bottle Green vinyl arrived sometime in January, 2 to 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and that's very, very nice.
My mouth is just watering. I'm trying to get my mic wet here. Bloody hell.
Yeah, so I expected to have more copies than this because the fact that Morrison started selling it early actually cost them a few sales, because I didn't expect to have it until Amazon delivered it at some point later on the Friday, and I thought, I'm not prepared to wait that long. I will go into town. I actually booked the day off work on the 18th of December because it was McCartney III release date, and my plan was to go into town. Shops were open at that point. I was going to go to HMV or one of the local independents. I was going to buy the vinyl and the CD to tide me over the 5 or 6 hours until Amazon arrived. It's ridiculous, really. But it meant that I could cancel my Amazon order because I'd got the Morrison CD on the Monday.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. See, for anyone who's not a McCartney vinyl fan, that might not be a very compelling story, but I was gripped by that.
Well, yeah, I was going to get the HMV Blue vinyl.
I'm surprised you didn't, actually.
Yeah.
Every self-serving Brit should have that one,
Well, that's the one that I sort of expected to get, but then, I think Morrison's just scuppered a lot. It created some exciting opportunities for me to hear the album early, but it did scupper. It did sort of affect what I ended up getting.
Yeah, I was really upset I couldn't get either a red or a violet one. Those were really pretty, but my sister and my mum for Christmas got me the white CD, the blue vinyl, and the black vinyl. So I was very happy with that indeed.
I mean, it's the rare occasion where I think that the black vinyl is the rarity.
In terms of what people are talking about, yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I bet it makes up only 50% of the sales of the vinyl, I'd imagine. Maybe even less,
I think less, probably. Yeah, but I don't know, it's been fun. I mean, who could have predicted the McCartney III fun that happened at the end of last year? You certainly wouldn't have thought of that a year ago.
But it's also a good album. That's my favourite aspect of it. Not only is it arguably better than Egypt Station, but I don't think you agree with that sentiment.
I don't have a problem with anybody who thinks that. But yeah, for me, Egypt Station is a level up.
That's so interesting. That's quite a unique opinion now. It seems like the very vogue opinion now is to kind of abandon Egypt Station, be like, it was a bloated double album, and despite repeated warnings, was 4 minutes too long. And it's like, I put it on my vinyl player the other day, and over an hour flew by. It's still a really fun album. It's
only 10 minutes longer than McCartney III. It's 55 minutes. McCartney III is about 45.
That's so strange that it's on 2 discs then. Like, it probably only needs to be a disc and a half then, doesn't it?
Well, the McCartney III disc is pretty packed on vinyl. Your run-out groove at the end is so small because they've really gone...
And this is with modern vinyl pressing technology as well, where you can get those grooves closer together. Like, you're right, they were pushing it, like kind of like Tug of War was pushing it in 82 as well.
I think there's little doubt we will get a McCartney III 2-disc vinyl edition at some point. They'll find a way to look how much better it sounds now that you're not going right up to the centre of your record with the needle. It's but yeah, there is only 10 minutes difference between the two, which I think is a bit surprising, really. But
and that's mostly taken up by Deep Deep Feeling as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But Egypt Station, it's a weird one because the last sort of, let's say, 15 minutes or so of Egypt Station, genuinely, there is no other album in history by anybody that gets me emotionally like the end of Egypt Station does. And if you ask me for a reason why, I don't think I could tell you. I think it was just so much better than what I had a right to expect it to be, and I've just sort of carried that with me to this day.
I think New made people a little too comfortable with what the Paul sound is.
Yeah.
And, Egypt Station is an evolution from New with the whole, like, multi-producer setup, and it's a very varied album. But there's just something a little more focused about Egypt Station. I hate to use the word concept because it's not a proper concept album.
No.
But it just moves. It goes along the track so much more gracefully than New, which is a little bit stop-start in places.
Yeah.
And you can't deny songs like Happy With You and Dominoes. Those are legitimate McCartney classics.
It's brilliant. So I've got a poster up that I'm looking at right now as I talk to you, up to my right, and it's that old Beatles poster from, I think it's 1963, and it's that one where they're all walking down the pavement towards the BBC in the suits.
Mm.
And the first time I heard Happy With You, I was kind of looking at that poster and I thought, oh, this is that guy on that poster, that young lad who's sort of in his early 20s. That's him now, sort of, what would it have been at the time, sort of 55, 56 years later. This is him telling us how his life's going. He's happy. He used to get stoned, now he doesn't, and he's happy with you. And I got a little bit emotional at that. So now whenever that song plays, I just have a look at this poster of 1963 Paul with his three mates and thinking, this is what he's up to these days. So I quite like it.
No, you're right there. That's such a wonderful arc to the whole story. But he doesn't definitively say he doesn't smoke anymore. In the last verse, he drops a little clue for all of his Colorado friends, shall we say.
You'll have to remind me. I can't remember what that is.
He swaps back, I like to get stoned, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
But, again, Paul's history with certain substances is hazy and foggy, shall we say.
Absolutely, yeah. But I do need to go and listen to Egypt Station again because I've not heard it since McCartney III came out.
Oh, it's good. You'll enjoy yourself. You really will.
A lot of what I loved about Egypt Station was all the many, many clues in there that I picked up on as to why it was his last album. And I haven't gone back and listened to it on the basis of it not being his last album to see whether it still gets me in the same way, because there are so many things in that album that if it had been his last album, they were like...
People want
they
peace,
were the clues.
Ladies and gentlemen, Do It Now, that's a last album song.
Yeah, but there's all these little clues as well, like things like Station 2 comes in and it sounds like a choir. It sounds like he's going up to heaven, and it sounds like you hear the guitar being plugged in, and it's almost like he's gone up to heaven, plugged in his guitar because he's got mates that he wants to jam with, and then he's playing with them, and the very last words of the album are so long, so long, so long now.
Yeah, on Dominoes as well. In time we'll know it's all a show. It's been a blast.
Yeah, and there's so many things that sound a little bit like something from Tug of War, or the first few seconds of Egypt Station, that sort of background noise is very, very similar to the first few seconds of Sgt. Pepper. There's all these little things where it's just like him giving you a little reminder of this is my career, and then at the end all these clues as to, well, it's been great, so long now.
Is Egypt Station the most intertextual McCartney album?
There's an awful lot more to talk about on that than what I've just said, but I need to listen to it again based on the fact that knowing now that it isn't his last album, does it still hold up as much, knowing that actually what I suspected for a couple of years turned out to be not right?
Well, it's a good thing you didn't, go on a university college radio station, because by now we'd have another Paul is Dead situation on our hands.
Oh, don't. Oh, dear me.
No, we don't talk about that after the 3 episodes I dedicated to it.
I don't engage with those people.
There are people on Facebook. I'm not going to name names, but there are still people on Facebook that still propagate all of that, and they're just doing it to sell books. They're just doing it to sell books.
Utterly ridiculous. Well, one of them is George Martin's son. Are you aware of this?
What?
Not Giles. No, that would be a. That would be a twist in the story.
Giles, I've been in the studio with you for 30 years. Come on.
No, I can't remember what his first name is now, but it would be Giles's older half brother, I think. And he is one of the Paul is Dead people, writing books and pushing sort of seminars on the subject. And he's crazy.
I'm not saying this is what it is, but it sounds like someone's trying to make a quick buck off their family name.
Do you think?
I mean, it's almost like everyone who ever looked at the Beatles has written a fucking book.
Well, yes.
And, It's not like only the people who have written books get advanced copies of McCartney III and Dice, whilst the podcasters and YouTubers get fuck all.
Oh, well, yes, I got told that I was receiving Dice and they never arrived.
What? You were told you were... that's the worst news! That's worse than... Oh my God, folks. We need to stop this episode now. I've got to go to MPL and give them a piece of my mind.
Oh, not MPL. Capitol Records. I got an email from Capitol Records saying, "Can we have your address, please? We've got a gift for you." That's interesting. And then within a day or so, lots of people in America started receiving the Dice. I thought, that's what the gift is. Brilliant. Look forward to that. And it didn't arrive. And I got back in touch with them, and they were very apologetic and said, "I'll see if we can sort you some more out." And I've not seen those either, so never mind.
My hand is literally shaking right now. That is awful news. Oh my word.
I know. Never mind.
Right, let's purge that from our minds. We've nearly been talking for an hour. Before we get onto the film that we're going to be discussing shortly, you've all read the title. I guess you know what we're going to be talking about. I think it's important that we cover all the bases, which brings us to the year 1989. Mac has had a rather lacklustre reception to Press to Play. The Phil Ramone sessions have been all but scrapped. And yet, through sheer force of will and conviction, he releases an unexpectedly consistent, high-quality UK #1 album called Flowers in the Dirt. So, Andrew, please don't take offence in my assumption that you were old enough to have been around when this album was released.
I was.
But please, talk me through your experiences with this album.
Flowers in the Dirt has got a very special place in my heart because it was the first new Paul McCartney album to come out after I became a fan.
That's my Egypt Station then.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. And it's only really in the last maybe 2 or 3 years that I can start to listen to Flowers in the Dirt a little bit more objectively, rather than being sort of completely overwhelmed by my memories of the time. And I mean, a little bit of my history of how I got to Flowers in the Dirt, if I can for a moment.
Please, we've got till 11 o'clock, you said.
Yeah. So the first new Paul McCartney song that I ever knew was Pipes of Peace, Christmas 1983. And this was back in the days when I used to tape the top 40 on a Sunday tea time onto a C90 cassette.
Allegedly, you never actually did that, folks.
Never actually did it, but I used to dream of doing such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just record the songs that I wanted and songs that I hadn't already recorded a previous week. And so this was kind of Christmas 1983, and Pipes of Peace got to #1. It wasn't the Christmas #1, I don't think. I think it was #1 just before Christmas, if I remember rightly. But I always remember what the DJ said, and I can't even remember which DJ it was. Because I like to get a little bit of DJ chatter. I know a lot of people like to try and stop the tape before the... And that was put... No, oh, damn, I got those little few words. I like to get a bit of DJ chatter. So the song would finish, Pipes of Peace, and the DJ came on and said, "Huddled away in a cabin somewhere, counting his money. Paul McCartney, Pipes of Peace." I always remembered that word for word. And so I used to think that that's who this guy is. I knew that he used to be in the Beatles, and I knew that the Beatles were that band that my mum and dad had a few albums of. They had the Red and Blue album, Sgt. Pepper, Help, and Rubber Soul. That was what we had in our house.
Pretty classic collection there, can't argue with that.
No, it was brilliant. So I knew he was one of those people on those album covers. I loved the Pipes of Peace, the song, and the following year, Give My Regards to Broad Street, I won a national newspaper competition to win the Spectrum 48K computer game of Give My Regards to Broad Street.
You owned that?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Oh.
Yeah. I had the massive map of London that came with it.
I've been dying to do an episode on that. Oh, folks, we might have another collab in the future. Oh, I'm so excited. Andrew, please, I'm interrupting. Carry on.
That's okay. So yeah, I absolutely loved the Give My Regards to Broad Street computer game. So then Press to Play completely passed me by. I don't ever remember either deliberately ignoring a record, like, for example, Press, when I was doing my Sunday tea time top 40 recordings.
It probably wasn't even on the radio, Andrew, if I'm honest.
Possibly not, but I have zero knowledge of Press to Play as an album in 1986. And I've always said that if I could choose any year in history to take somebody on in a pop quiz, it would be 1986. That is like I'll have you on a 1986 quiz. I'll take anybody on that year. But I have no recollection of Press to Play at all. It's really weird.
However absurd it may seem.
Yeah. I remember Spies Like Us, though, flipping heck. Why did I have to remember that? I had that on one of my tapes. But anyway, so when All the Best came out and the accompanying single Once Upon a Long Ago, I really liked Once Upon a Long Ago, and I thought, I'm going to get this All the Best. So I bought All the Best, and it was like my Bible for the next couple of years, was that album. I didn't know songs such as Band on the Run, Jet, Coming Up, Listen to What the Man Said, Another Day, and none of those songs I'd ever heard until I bought All the Best. So I just absolutely destroyed that cassette during 1988.
Sorry, a cassette. Sorry, what's a cassette?
A cassette, yes. It's this thing that you used to use in conjunction with a pencil to wind it back in when it broke. But the cassette revival is a horrible thing. I don't want to get started on that.
McCartney III on cassette, baby.
No, that's a format too far. I loved my cassettes back in the day, but they died for a reason. So I absolutely loved All the Best on cassette during 1988, and I got to know the songs that were on that, but nothing else really. It was those songs plus Spies Like Us. That's all I knew of his catalogue. So then there started to be this news coming out. Oh, he's got a new album coming out
called Shadowboxing.
Early 1989, he's got a new album coming out, but it's being preceded by not what we're going to talk about now.
Oh.
It's being preceded by an 8-part BBC Radio 1 series called McCartney on McCartney. Are you aware of that?
I'm going to say yes to save face, but explain it to me as if I don't.
Okay. So it was an 8 one-hour episodes on BBC Radio 1 presented by DJ Mike Reid, where he talked to Paul about everything from being born in June 1942 right through to the existence of Flowers in the Dirt. And I just loved it so much. So I've got all eight episodes recorded. So this was March 1989 this was on. So we're talking sort of maybe 3 months before Flowers in the Dirt came on. I was just learning to drive at that point, so I just hit 17. And they were my go-to tapes in the car, was McCartney on McCartney. And I actually got dumped by a girlfriend in after a holiday to Lanzarote.
Lanzarote, oh my gosh.
And I'm pretty convinced that the reason for me being dumped was that I spent most of the 2-week holiday listening to my McCartney on McCartney cassettes that I brought in a briefcase with me to Lanzarote. Yeah, I've just admitted that. Never mind.
McCartney fans' burden, if she can't handle the Macca, that's on her, dude.
Absolutely. So with everything that happened with All the Best and with this McCartney on McCartney radio series, which I did actually speak to Mike Reid about a few years ago, about one little incident that happened, not an incident, but something that happened in the radio show. Because during the first episode, Paul got his guitar out and started playing I Lost My Little Girl. Which at the time was, I don't know if he'd ever publicly mentioned that song at all. There might be people who've been around longer than I have that could say, oh yes, I remember him mentioning that in 1972 in an interview, but I don't remember anything before that. So he actually got his guitar out and started playing Well, I woke up late this morning, and he was doing all that. So I met Mike Reid about maybe 10 years ago or something like that. He was hosting a quiz night that I went to, a charity quiz night. So during a break, I thought, I've got to speak to Mike Reid about the fact that he did the McCartney on McCartney series. So I went up to him and I mentioned to him, oh, Mike, I said, I loved the series that you did with Paul McCartney back in 1989. And he said, oh, yeah, it was great. He says, let me tell you a little story. I said, please do. So he said, you might remember there was a section in it when Paul got his guitar out and he sang I Lost My Little Girl, the first song that he ever wrote. I said, yeah, I remember it well. He said, well, one of our engineers was sort of behind a glass booth at the time while the recording was being done. And this engineer apparently was a massive McCartney fan. And when Paul pulled out his guitar and started playing this song, he said this engineer started banging on the glass booth, like jumping up and down, like he'd never seen anybody so excited, going, he's never done this song before, I can't believe it. So yeah, Mike Reid was telling me this story about what happened behind the scenes on McCartney in 1989. But it's a really interesting series, and there's a lot of things that have followed Paul McCartney, like montages of clips from interviews where you'll actually realise that that's where it comes from.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I have the complete set in wonderful quality if we need to have a little afterwards.
That is almost as crazy as when finding out All Day by Kanye West is basically just 2 fingers that he did on Parkinson.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
It's all connected. Frank
Absolutely.
Sinatra's Party was originally called Fishy Matters Underwater.
Yeah.
It all goes back. I was honestly surprised we haven't had Crazy Dervish Moog be brought back as an instrumental. That was also from around the same time.
Well, I mean, I do wonder. There is a little cynical part of me that wonders how many songs is Paul McCartney actually writing these days,
and how easy
and how many are the ones that actually has had it knocking around since 1972, and now he's going to put some words to it and record it and pass it off as something that he's just written. I don't know, but like you say, Frank Sinatra's Party is a classic example of a song that's actually 40 odd years old, but it's that fact's not really publicised.
And another example of Paul is incapable of choosing the best songs for his albums.
Well, yes, that as well.
Physically incapable. I mean, all the best stuff always ends up on the cutting room floor. Why did we get the Rockestra theme and not get Cage? I will never know.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about that, Andrew. We're not here to talk about that.
No. So yes, McCartney was like March, April of 1989. So I'm starting at this point to get a bit excited about the fact that there's a brand new Paul McCartney album, and I'm now a fan. Therefore, this should be fun. And then what happened is, just before, I assume it must have been just before the album came out, because that's how these things tend to work, is that there was a documentary appeared on television. BBC it was. It must have been BBC, because I recorded it. There was no adverts in it, so it must have been BBC that showed it. And it was called Put It There. And it was all about the making of the new Paul McCartney album. So
this is before the release of the album?
I think it must have been. I think things like that tend to get shown. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think it was shown just before the album came out.
Yeah, according to IMDb, that would have been the 10th of June, 1989.
Yes, so this would have come out just before then. So I recorded it on TV, and it was really weird. It was one of these things where I must have, for a good month or so, I must have watched it every day. Which there's only been two. No, sorry, there's 3. There's been 3 other things since then that I've done that with, and that's been when I got Hard Day's Night on video for the first time, when I got U2's Rattle and Hum film, and when I got Wayne's World on video. those are the other things in my life that I must have watched every day for a month when I first got. So it's in pretty exclusive company there as a thing in my life.
I love that Wayne's World is alongside that. I mean, we've already mentioned Spies Like Us, but I watched the Blues Brothers for the very first time last night, so I'm on a massive Dan Aykroyd trip at the moment. Okay.
Yes, of course. Yes, he was in Spies Like Us, wasn't he? Which I've still never seen the film of Spies Like Us.
I'm suspicious now that Paul was told it was going to be the next Blues Brothers.
Yeah, or he thought it was another Bond theme, maybe.
Oh, come on. Let Paul have another stab at it in 2022. Come on.
Yeah. So, yeah, this documentary came on, which I absolutely devoured, and it was probably partly the reason why I had to then buy my own television and video to go in my bedroom, because I was still living at home with my mum and dad at the time, so that I could watch things like that whenever I wanted and not just have to wait until they were out of the house, because they weren't going to sit and watch it. That was for sure. So, yeah, I absolutely hammered that documentary and then the album. And so June 1989, you're saying, was the release date. That's also the month that I passed my driving test. And I remember that it was a really nice summer. And I just remember driving around my hometown that summer with the windows down, with Flowers in the Dirt blaring out. You know, all the other cool kids were listening to Stone Roses and Happy Mondays, and they were all off on raves, and I'm blasting out My Brave Face and this one out of my car stereo. So yeah, I was a little bit old before my time then.
I get that.
Yeah. But this documentary has absolutely stayed with me ever since, and I know that there are certain versions of the documentary around, different lengths, and the one that was shown on the BBC was the full-length one, because I know that the shorter version that I've got was definitely missing things that I had on that video from the time.
Yeah, apparently there was like a short introduction about cruelty to animals or something. Like, was that all related to the Friends of the Earth thing associated with the live tour, or?
Well, not on the documentary there wasn't. Certainly not what was shown on TV. I mean, I know he certainly starts off the beginning of the documentary is the very first things that he says are things like, you've got to be ecologically minded. You can do the voice much better than I can.
You've got to be ecologically minded.
You know, otherwise I'm not going to be here much longer. You know, you got to be. So I can't do it. I'm not going to attempt.
It wasn't bad. That wasn't. I've heard worse.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, the start of the documentary, he's straight in talking about his. I think it was it Friends of the Earth was the organisation that he was connected to most at that time. So yeah, it opens with him in his lovely suit that he's wearing, his lovely jacket, grey jacket with flowers on. I was a big fan of his fashion sense in 1989 as well. That brown waistcoat that he wears.
As long as it's not that yellow and black or black and white top he wears on stage at Nebworth. Fuck me.
No, that brown waistcoat. I bought a brown waistcoat the same and wore it sort of at every opportunity I had for about the next 3 years.
I've got some braces and a white shirt for the exact same occasion. Don't you worry. I'm going to walk out with my thumbs aloft and a hoffer in one hand, you know?
Yeah. So, so he starts off talking about that, and then you start to see him do some rehearsals, and you get to see his new band, because, of course, I mean, he's very much... He didn't have any particular people associated with him, really, during the 80s up till that point. Obviously, he'd had sort of session musicians working with him, and the odd guest that you knew, like Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, but he'd not had that band like Wings before. So to actually have a group of musicians associated where you can see that these are the people who are his backing band, this was kind of our first glimpse of those people, really.
What do you think of this lineup, though? Because it's, for me, visually, it's easily the most macho lineup he's ever had. It's all a bunch of blokes doing rock, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's that nickname. Are you aware of the nickname for this band, which I've never quite understood where it came from, but it kind of fits in with that.
Go on.
They're known as Lumpy Trousers.
I've heard Lumpy Trousers be used for something else as well.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what it means. But this band...
well, I think actress to a bishop, you might say.
Well, yeah, but in terms of... I wouldn't expect those two words to be used to refer to a Paul McCartney backing band. But if you ever hear anybody talk about Paul McCartney's Lumpy Trousers band, this is the lineup that they're talking about. Why, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely an odd one. I've definitely been harsh on this band, probably even harsher than, like, you know, some versions of Wings, but I guess it's just because for me at the moment this live era of Paul is not quite as iconic to me yet. I've done 6 hours on Tripping the Life Fantastic at the moment, and there's only a couple of songs where I can notice the individual performers, like Chris Whitten on Coming Up for example is a standout.
Yeah.
Hamish's vocals on Ebony and Ivory I thought were outstanding, but you know, there's not. Oh, Denny Lane's going to do Richard Corey now. Oh, wicked!
Who decided that was a thing that Wings needed to do in the mid-70s?
Let's not even do Denny's song from his other band. Denny's going to do a song from a band that we've got no connection to whatsoever.
Yeah. So yeah, it was our introduction to this band, and Chris Whitten. So I mean, I was going through in order of sort of when Paul recruited them. Chris Whitten was the first of that band to be recruited to Paul, and I listened to a long Chris Whitten interview last week that was done about 5 or 6 years ago, and I feel I owe him a big apology because I've kind of misunderstood him, it would appear, for the last 25 years.
Go on.
Because I'm convinced that I'd read somewhere, and I can only guess it was maybe Q magazine because that was my reading of choice in the 90s. I was sure I'd read Chris Whitten say something like, I enjoyed playing with Dire Straits far more than I enjoyed playing with Paul McCartney because I actually got to use my technical skills as a drummer. Is what I thought I'd read, and I'd had that in my mind for a long time, which turns out to be complete nonsense. So yeah, Chris Whitten worked with Paul obviously during this period and before, and then after he'd finished the tour, he got asked by Dire Straits if he would go on tour with them, and his reply was, "No, I don't like Dire Straits." It was the answer that he gave to Dire Straits. Wow. Yeah, I think he said it was Dire Straits' manager that he said, "I don't like Dire Straits, and I've heard that Mark Knopfler is a nightmare to drummers." Was his reply. Eventually, they managed to talk him round, but he actually said in this interview, and I listened to about 40 minutes of this interview. He was absolutely gushing about the time that he had in Paul McCartney's band being probably his favourite time that he's ever had in music, how it was absolutely brilliant. But at the end of it, he said he always thought of himself as a studio drummer, maybe sort of a drummer for hire, rather than a touring drummer.
Yeah, because I heard that they had quite a bad split, Chris and Paul.
Well, I don't know, because I
don't know where I read that. But...
I mean, maybe I don't know, because I'm pretty sure that Chris contributed to the Flowers in the Dirt archive, so presumably still on decent terms. And I've heard Paul mention him a few times, and never anything in a bad way. But he was absolutely gushing in this interview about how it was brilliant. He hated being on tour with Dire Straits, didn't want to do it, got kind of forced into it, but he looks back on the Paul McCartney era with absolute fondness. So I kind of owe him an apology for thinking bad of him for 25 years. But it was interesting as well in this interview. So he was saying that he mentioned that he was recruited first, and he went into a little bit of detail, perhaps more than you might think that Paul might want him to. So he said that how it was sold to him as a gig was that Paul was looking for a younger band so that he could rebuild his reputation as a rocker. So after coming off the back of the Frog Chorus, Pipes of Peace being a bit of a flop, and Press to Play being a bit of a flop, Broad Street being a big flop in certain ways, it was the point, really. It was kind of like a make or break. He's got to get out there and do it and prove who he is, because the last sort of 5 years or so have not really done him any favours. So Chris said that Paul was looking for a younger band so he could build his reputation as a rocker. Now, Chris also said something that I'm not exactly sure what he meant by it. I've kind of got my own thoughts. So he said that the first thing that he did with Paul was working on something for the Rupert soundtrack, which I'm not sure whether that's right or not. And I wondered whether what Chris actually meant was Once Upon a Long Ago, which was March 1987 that was recorded. So that could well be what he meant, because the Once Upon a Long Ago video used quite a bit of animation, and it looked as, I think it was originally, wasn't it supposed to be something to do with some sort of a film? So maybe he thought that that's what it was, or maybe he did do something Rupert related that I don't know about. I'm not quite sure. So he did that, and then he did the Russian album sessions for Chob BCCCP, and that was July '87. So he was kind of firmly on board. Then Paul had kind of accepted him and said that he was the guy that he wanted. The other thing that Chris said in this interview that I thought was quite interesting was they'd done a lot of sessions for the album for Flowers in the Dirt during the sort of the back end of 1988, and nobody was really sure which songs were going to make it onto the album. So he said what Paul did, he gave all of the band who were there at the time, and I don't think Wicks was with them by that point, I could be wrong, but he gave all the band a tape of all the songs that they'd done so far and said, right, we're finishing for Christmas. Over Christmas, just listen to this tape, and then when we come back, we'll all sort of throw our opinion in as to what songs we want to continue with when we come back in the new year. And that's what they did, apparently. And I'd never heard that mentioned anywhere until I heard Chris talking about it on this interview. So it's quite interesting that he was really sort of interested in the band's opinion, and he was really it wasn't always a case of, you know, Paul, every decision has been made by Paul McCartney here. He really wanted everybody to know, to input what they thought was the best thing that they should be doing.
That does sound a little bit too close to, you know, when he was like, right guys, I want everyone to go home this weekend and write a new single, and we'll pick the best one. Coincidentally, we're going to pick my one, Good Night Tonight, Daytime, Nighttime Suffering.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that they were recording any Hamish Stewart songs during that period, but... I
want the first Stone to be the first song on the album, Paul. Come on.
Yeah.
Party.
So yeah, Chris was very much sort of in there from the early days, and then I think Hamish was next, and I was amazed. I looked up how old Hamish and Robbie were when they joined Paul's band, because me looking back, my memories of it from the time were that these were a couple of really old men.
They do look old. They do
look like old men. Hamish was 39 at the time. Robbie was 31.
He looks like a guy in his mid-40s, doesn't he?
Yeah. I just think of them as being, you know, at least Paul's age, possibly older.
Is it the fashion or just the cameras, like the really grainy, poor, low pixel quality?
I don't know. I think the fashion definitely, yeah, I remember being I was really surprised. This was just last week when I looked them up on Wikipedia for their ages, and I thought, I can't believe, especially that Robbie was only 31 back then. Incredible. But so yeah, Hamish was next in, and so obviously he'd been with the Average White Band, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know. I'm not sure I could still name a song of theirs now, to be honest. But
I can't.
I think it's kind of interesting that there's a definite kind of, there's a template for a Paul McCartney band, and it started with Wings, with Denny Lane, and it's happened ever since. And Hamish is the person in this band of the sort of versatile person who can play whatever Paul isn't.
So who's that now? Is it Rusty or Brian?
Brian, I would say, because Rusty's he's exclusively guitar, isn't he? Whereas Brian will play bass when Paul's on the piano. He will switch to guitar when Paul is on bass, for example. So obviously, I think Denny Lane did that. I think Denny Lane played bass now and again, didn't he? When he
played bass on like Maybe I'm Amazed and stuff like that. Did Jimmy ever play bass? Ooh. I'm sure he may have played bass once on like one song. Maybe for something like Wings Over the World, not like Wings Over America, perhaps.
Yeah. I don't know, possibly. But there's definitely always been that that sort of, I don't wish to use the word floater.
Virtuoso, shall we say.
That's the word I'm looking for. That person who kind of fills in whatever Paul's not doing, this person steps in.
Wix is a bit of that, though, as well.
Yeah. So
more in a production sense and an arrangement sense, but yeah.
Yeah, he'll play the accordion now and again. I think he does get on the guitar now and again as well, doesn't he? Wix.
I think possibly for something like Put It There he did, where they were all on guitar.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that though, folks.
No. So yeah, Hamish was, and like I say, he's got a great voice. He's got that really sort of soulful voice, and I think Paul knew that and used it to good effect. Even, you know, when they did the Unplugged a couple of years later, Hamish got to sing Ain't No Sunshine, didn't he? And Paul went on to drums for the song. So he was keen to use Hamish's talents there, definitely.
And who else have we got? Then
we've got Robbie McIntosh.
The old Robbie McIntosh.
31 years old, Robbie McIntosh. That's just incredible. What I certainly didn't know at the time was that this was somebody whose music I already knew. So he'd come off the back of a few years in the Pretenders. And I know one song specifically now that I know that he played on was 2,000 Miles, which is one of my favourite songs of that era, and coincidentally is on the exact same C90 taped on a Sunday tea time that Pipes of Peace was on. Wow. So I had Paul McCartney and Robbie McIntosh existing on the same piece of cassette back in 1983. None of us knowing what would happen later on.
Maybe you are more interwoven in this tapestry than even you know.
Well, possibly so, but I think Robbie is, I think technically he's probably the best guitarist that Paul's had.
Interesting. I don't have enough information to challenge you on that, I'm afraid. So I'm going to put it to the audience, folks. I'm always asking you for random emails, but who is the best guitarist Paul McCartney has ever had? Drop me an email at paulmccartneypod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear some answers.
Yes, I think like Jimmy McCulloch, for example, and Henry before him, they were maybe a bit more instinct kind of players, and just Robbie was technically brilliant, I think. Probably a better guitarist than Rusty. I'm not knocking Rusty because he's really good, but I think Robbie's probably the best that Paul's had in that role. He could do it all. He was brilliant.
And last we come to Wixie then, I guess.
Well, last, there's Linda.
She was already there, though.
She was.
She's like the rose with the Romans. Oh, well, the Linda goes without saying, doesn't it?
I would love to know what went through Linda's mind at various points, because I can't help thinking that there was a little bit of her in 1980 that thought, oh, thank God that's over. And then when Paul started it all back up again at the end of the 80s, I wonder how that conversation went. Did Linda very, very willingly step back into being a rock star on album and on stage? Or was it a case of, oh, God, I've got to do this for the next few years again? And I really don't know what her opinion was on that.
Here's a question. How old were the kids by this point, by 89, 90? Were they all 18?
No. So okay. Mary would have been about 18, 19. Stella would have been a couple of years younger. Heather would have been, 26-ish, 26, 27. Probably not having to... She was probably able to stay at home on her own by that point. And James, I think, would have been about 11, because I think Linda had James round about the London town era, didn't she? 78.
Just before, yeah.
Yeah, so he would have been about sort of 10, 11 years old. So they were, I think they probably went on tour with the parents, because I can't imagine Paul and Linda going off and doing that and leaving the kids behind. It wasn't their thing, was it?
I mean, Paul's got to smuggle his marijuana somehow, hasn't he?
Yeah. Hey, Stella, will you just look after this for me? No, he wouldn't do that.
Not when they're old enough to refuse or know what's going on, but if they're just in a nappy, allegedly. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd love to know how keen Linda was to get back into all this again. I don't know, but I think, Linda and Wix. Wix was the last one to come in, and it's incredible now that he's been with Paul for over 30 years. And you hardly see him in this documentary, in the Put It There documentaries. Just every now and again he'll appear on screen with his head down with his hat on, so you can hardly see his face anyway. You'll see him for a couple of seconds, but he's hardly in it. And I just think, if they'd have known what a part of his career he was going to be over the next 30-odd years, I'd like to think they would have given him a little bit more airtime. But you never know. A little bit, yeah.
So, yeah, Wix is great. I think he's like a musical director, isn't he, for Paul's bands these days? And I know he gets slated a bit for some of his horn sounds, and I think it probably did allow Paul to be maybe a little bit. I don't think lazy is the word, but where some bands put on a great show because they get in a live brass section or a bit of a live orchestra.
Yeah.
And Paul's never really had to do that in the last 30 years because he's had Wix and his Roland keyboard.
Yeah, because when I saw him in 2018, there were 6 members of a brass band that were interspersed in the audience, and it was so much better.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was very much like, in Love Actually, when they're doing All You Need Is Love, and people just stand up in the audience playing brass instruments. It was very much like that.
I'll pretend I've seen that film.
You haven't seen Love Actually?
No.
Oh my God! You watched Wayne's World every day for 10 years, and you haven't seen Love Actually.
Yeah, sorry. But, there you go.
I'm calm.
Okay, good, yes. Wix, I think it's just incredible how long he's worked with Paul for, really, and been a great servant to him over the years.
No, he must have a lovely nest egg at the end of all this. If he doesn't, he's got the patience of a saint.
Yeah, definitely. But I think overall, I think this was a really good band. It was quite. I think just production-wise, it was quite a safe era. I don't know how well this band would have worked. For example, I personally think that what Paul's done in the last few years has been a lot more interesting production-wise than what he was doing back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's quite a safe band. Technically great, and I really like them. But I wonder how much I wonder how good they would have been in a more experimental era. I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Who knows, eh? And now that we've discussed the band members themselves, let's move on to the documentary.
Yes.
The best summary I could find was from McCartney's own website, and it reads as thus. This fascinating hour-long documentary film takes the viewer to the very heart of the creative process, focusing on the 1989 acclaimed album Flowers in the Dirt. Mixing studio footage with interviews, Put It There features Paul McCartney talking candidly about the process behind some of the most album's beloved songs, especially a detailed exploration of the single My Brave Face, co-written with Elvis Costello. Candid, anecdotal and honest, the documentary is a must for any Paul McCartney fan and was expanded for its DVD release to include a gallery selection and previously unseen footage.
Yes.
Now, that is, well, it sounds like Derek Taylor wrote that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite a claim for something that they've never really properly released. I mean, I know it ended up in the archive collection.
So is that your copy from the archive collection, your DVD, or is that a separate purchase?
No, so I no longer have the VHS that recorded in 1989. that went a long time ago.
Oh, my heart.
But I happened to be in Amsterdam in 2005, and I saw it on DVD. So it's like the only thing I remember about that holiday is that I saw Put It There on DVD in a record shop in Amsterdam. So I bought it then, and what I bought is the version which runs at 52 minutes, which has got a fair few things missing that were on that original TV broadcast. But thankfully, the one that is in the archive collection is back to being as near as you are now ever going to see the full version. There is one tiny little edit in that version, and it's it's because Paul does a Jimmy Savile impression.
No.
Yeah. So have you not seen that? Have you not? You won't have seen that bit, will you?
Oh my God. So does he do a little minute, Jimmy, just like that?
It's right near the end where he's talking about you got to have a laugh in the studio, and then it cuts to this little montage of various clips of them having a laugh in the studio.
Oh, he goes now then.
That's it. My babe. How's about that then? I'm running the marathon.
That's Jimmy. Oh my God!
With a fake cigar in his mouth.
You've just connected those dots there. I've got neurons firing in every direction now. Oh my God!
Yes. So that little bit, I can understand why. I'm not a great fan of censoring things like that. Coincidentally, I did happen to listen to Kate Bush Ariel today in the version that has Rolf Harris singing a song on it. But I can understand why it was cut out, but it does mean that you are... I don't think the actual full version is available anywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can imagine, that Phil Spector Christmas album that was retitled to Christmas with Phil Spector. I can imagine if they ever re-release that again, it'll go back to the original title.
Christmas with the Ronettes and Friends.
I mean... I can't believe John said to Phil, "Treat me like Ronnie," at the start of the rock and roll sessions. Famous last words, if there ever was any. Oh yes. My gosh.
Was that before or after Phil waved a gun at him?
And stole his James Dean tapes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got the DVD that I bought in 2005, and then I've got the version, the fullest version that you're going to get now in the archive collection.
How is that packaged? Just in like a little cardboard sleeve, or
it's kind of like all the other archive collections, really, where all the more recent ones anyway, where you've got various books inside the deluxe package, and one of the books is one where all the discs are slotted in. So nice. it's the DVD disc for that, which it's got a few videos of My Brave Face and the singles, but then it's got the Put It There documentary. So it was Tracy McLeod was the lady who was interviewing him, journalist. And I thought even that was interesting, the fact that previous album, Press to Play, when he'd, as far as I know, Press to Play was the first one where he'd done this kind of thing, like a special to promote his new album. Even though they've rarely mentioned Press to Play in it, they were much more keen to talk about other things. But even on that, where he's been interviewed by, I think it was Richard Skinner, who's about as close to Simon Bates as you can get, or like a smashy and nicey kind of character. Whereas here, he goes for a sort of a young up-and-coming journalist type of interview.
And she's far too clever for this documentary. She's like talking about how melodious the bass is and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're supposed to ask him how Let It Be was written and then listen to the anecdote about his mum. Yeah. That's how this is done, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. Well, I've got a bit of a regret here because I actually got in touch with Tracy a few years ago when just before the Flowers in the Dirt archive got announced. It was in that period where we know in a couple of days it's about to be announced. So I got in touch with Tracy on Twitter, and I found these tweets the other day. They're still there, where I said to her, along with a picture, a screenshot, as it like she'd forgotten what I was talking about. I sent her a screenshot to remind her that she'd done this Paul McCartney documentary. But
I met Paul McCartney that one time, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I sent her a screenshot of the start of the end credits where it says interviewer Tracy McLeod in front of an image of Paul starting to sing Let It Be. So I sent this picture along with, it looks like this documentary that you did back in 1989 is about to be re-released. Any chance I could do an interview with you to talk about your memories of what happened over that day, couple of days, however long it was? And her first reply to me was, I can't believe they spelled both my first and my last name wrong in the credits.
Oh, no.
She said, do you know who's re-releasing it? Because I'm going to get in touch with them and see if they'll redo the credits. I thought, well, good luck with that. I don't think they'll be doing that kind of thing. But she did say to me, yes, why not? I'll happily do that. And a bit of a regret of mine is the fact that I didn't follow up on it because I didn't really have an outlet for it. I hadn't started doing YouTube at the time. And I thought, well, if I do interview her, what am I going to do with it? I haven't got a website or anything. It's not going to go anywhere. So what's the point in me doing it? And so I didn't do it. I wish I had now. But that does suggest, if you fancied getting in touch with Tracy, it does suggest she might be up for that kind of thing because she's already said yes in the past.
If you don't think I've already written that down, Andrew, we're not on the same level of mutual respect that I thought.
There we go. But it did tickle me that, her main concern was both her names had been spelt wrong.
That's classic Beatles, that is.
Yep.
Down to the finest detail, except for the obvious details.
Yes.
So, as far as I'm aware, the main big differences between the two edits are a lot of the songs tend to run a few seconds longer, as well as the inclusion of Hello, Goodbye and Just Because.
Yes, it's not... well, when it says Hello, Goodbye in the track listing for it...
Oh, is that because it's the coda to put it there?
Yes, it's the hello. That's all it is.
I feel like a right twat now. Oh,
no. I mean, it clearly says... I'm looking at the DVD as we speak, and it says Hello, Goodbye. But no, it isn't. It's they do they finish off, put it there, and they went yes, and they go straight into the Hawaiian style coda of Hello, Goodbye.
It's so good though. Like when I heard it on Tripping the Life Fantastic the first time, it brought such a smile to my face. I was like, he knows how. Paul is one of the best gleaners of nostalgia ever. Like Paul should have been put in charge of the new Star Wars trilogy because he would have done it correctly. I think Palpatine should be Rey's grandfather.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry, folks. Came out 2 years ago. Now, one of the elements that really got me excited for this documentary, though, was the director and the producer, because Jeff Wanfor and Chipperfield would go on to create a little-known documentary series called The Beatles Anthology.
Yes.
Am I correct in assuming you've seen that obscure documentary series?
Have a guess.
Go on.
Yes. It was... that was such a huge event in my life, was the Beatles Anthology. Absolutely incredible. I remember 1995, November 95, when it was first on TV. It was on a Sunday night on ITV. I think 8 o'clock. I mean, could you imagine them doing something like that at 8 o'clock on a Sunday on ITV? And I think they did it similar in America. I think it was like really prime time on big stations. I'm sure your American listeners will likely remember exactly what channel it was on, what day of the week it was on. They even had a scheduled broadcast that you could see in the TV listings to show the Free as a Bird video. Oh, that's what an event it was. And it was something like 5 to 8 midweek one night. It was like something like a Tuesday night, and they'd got whatever program it was that would normally be on from 7:30 till 8. They'd moved it forward. I don't know if it was Coronation Street or something. And then they just slipped in the Free as a Bird video as like 5 to 8 in the TV listings. And they did the same a few months later with Real Love as well. So it was a massive event. It's just fantastic. It's still an
Beatles song. Are you fucking kidding me? You must have been losing your mind.
It was Free as a Bird kept off the number 1 slot by Michael Jackson's Earth song.
Honestly, folks, I love Michael Jackson. I can separate him from his personal life very easily. I do the same with John Lennon, the wife-beating heroin addict. You can do it. You can separate people.
Yeah.
Earth Song is one of his worst singles. Oh my god, I hate that song so much.
At least Jarvis Cocker sort of did us all a favour at the Brit Awards the year after when he was performing that. So,
what happened?
Thank you, Jarvis. When Jarvis got up, the story about Jarvis got up on stage and waggled his bottom at Michael Jackson, and got arrested for the trouble, and was then. He was represented in police custody by Bob Mortimer. I'm sure all your American listeners are wondering who the heck Bob Mortimer is. One of our finest comedians.
I did a 4-hour episode on the Ruttles where I talked about Rutland Weekend Television. My American listeners are more than aware that I make very British references on this show. You plonker.
Yes.
Just the very fact that there was new Beatle content that is so indescribable to me. But something I want to touch on with the idea of this being directed by George Wanfer is that he also went on to direct Paul's first Cavern Club gig in '99. The inferior Cavern Club gig. I mean, the modern Paul McCartney time slot now is 11:45, with his latest one. And I think the last time we saw Paul on primetime TV would have been The X Factor, which is quite sad, actually. But yeah, back to George Wanfer. I'm pretty convinced that his inclusion in this and the fact that he is a Paul man is another one of those little reasons that forced George Martin to be ousted from the project. Because you can't have Paul's producer, Paul's director, and Paul on this project. I also just want to quickly talk about the cinematography and the presentation of this documentary, because it's way more interesting than it should be.
Oh, God, yes.
Throughout, you get a lot of dynamic TV and screen interplay. You could have Paul appearing on 4 different TV screens in a very Hard Day's Night kind of manner. Or you'll cut to this... it's a shot that's reflected and flips to the other side of the screen in a bit of symmetry, but one's in colour and the one's in sepia or black and white. They didn't have to do any of that.
No.
I mean, the times when they don't do that, a lot of the footage is admittedly quite flat.
Yeah.
And you know what? Kudos to George Wanfer by saying, you know what? Let's just fucking make this look more interesting. And he did.
Yeah, it really does, and it's they were pulling out a lot of tricks, and that's one of the things I really enjoyed back in 1989. Because all right, you look at it now and you might think, oh, it looks a bit cheesy effects, but at the time it was like, oh wow, this is great. And even just things like when they do Figure of 8 and they just wash it in a blue colour, the whole thing's blue, and it's just like it just seems to fit. But there's a really good example that I think might not have been on the version that you watched. Did your version have Fool on the Hill?
No. Fool on the Hill, that's the one I meant to mention earlier, not Hello Goodbye.
Right. Yes. So Fool on the Hill is probably the biggest example of what you're talking about, and you won't have seen it, unfortunately. So it's like these crazy effects. So it does the verse as normal. And then when it cuts to the bit where he's going round and round and round,
don't tell me the camera starts spinning.
Well, not one camera, not just one camera. It's about you then see Paul playing the piano, but then you see Paul playing the piano in about 10 different smaller windows that are rotating in a carousel fashion on screen. And it's just, in 1989, I can't say how good that looked.
That sounds trippier than the Ue Soleil video.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So it's probably the biggest example of that, which unfortunately isn't on that 52-minute version. But yeah, like you say, there is a lot of that kind of effect, and I think it just makes it a bit more interesting visually. Certainly did at the time, because I think everything has to be watched in context. I'm a great one for context. You know, you might say something looks a bit cheesy now, but you know, this was 1989 and it could only be made using things that were available in 1989, and I think it's harsh to judge it by any other
if
standard.
you say 1933's King Kong has bad special effects, I'm not going to take any other opinion you have seriously. I'm just not.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if I see a film from 1973 that looks completely of its age, that's great. I want to see a film that looks like it was made in 1973, and that's exactly what I would have got if I'm watching something from that period. So I think, the effects are great, and they are used quite a lot throughout. Like you say, it might just be bits when he's talking, and instead of us watching him talking, you're actually watching 4 TV screens all showing the same thing, which is quite interesting. I mean, I don't know whether Paul himself either had that idea or whether he took that idea and remembered it a few years later. It was on TFI Friday, which anybody who took any notice of the Flaming Pie archive last year will remember those 2 clips of when he appeared on TFI Friday doing the title song.
Because to me, it reminded me of the opening of the James Paul McCartney TV special when they're doing Big Barn Bed, and there's 50 TV screens.
Yeah, like the Kenny Everett show kind of thing behind him.
Yes, another British reference for our listeners there.
Yeah. There's a Beatles connection there with Kenny, quite a good Beatles connection. So yes, of course, there's that as well. So it's something that's appeared every now and again throughout his career. So maybe it's something that he saw, like you say, Hard Day's Night. I think when they're in the studio rehearsing, there's things like that. So maybe it's just something he always remembered and liked to use now and again.
I just like squares, you know.
Yeah, L7 Sea Moon.
I'm never going to understand what that means. May vest in a sweaty vest. Like, come on, Paul, you've got to let us know what that means now. Come on.
Yeah, but then Sea Moon, that's the first song you see in the film.
Just one last thing before we get into the film itself, though. What does your copy look like? Is it actually HD? Have they touched it up, or is it as grainy as ever on the DVD still?
I would say, so you mean the archive collection version?
Yeah.
I would say, I think it is. It's a step up from the DVD. It's not. I mean, for example, when I saw Bruce McMouse, I just thought, my God, this looks fantastic. I was not expecting that to look that good. This must have been recorded onto TV. I mean, I'm not a film person, but I know there's like different numbers of millimeters, isn't there? This wasn't recorded in 35mm and able to be made HD, I don't think. But it's all right. Some of the studio stuff looks quite good.
Yeah, it does, and it's definitely got that old camera quality thing where it's like, as long as everything's taking place in a well-lit studio, it looks great. The moment you take it outside, it's going to look awful using natural light. But, case right.
Well, thank you very much, anybody who's still here at this point. That is the end of part 1. Part 2 is going to be coming very shortly, where we will discuss the rest of the documentary and no doubt go off on many tangents again. Look forward to seeing you for that very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.